Welcome back to the Nomad Hedge, everybody. In today's video, we will be taking a look at the technicals of the S&P 500, the Qs, and then we're going to look at the crypto markets and see how this is tying up to the stock market as well. We're seeing some distribution in the market, so we're also going to take a look at the dollar and the VIX to see if there is some correlation there, and then we'll move on to the commodity markets, and then we'll have a look at two stocks that are looking very interesting right now in terms of this whole correction that's now playing out. So if you haven't already, consider liking and subscribing, and let's get into the video. So let's begin by taking a look at the S&P 500 here on a weekly chart. And just to give you a perspective, how I view this market is that we have concluded wave 1 and wave 2 of primary degree. So we are currently progressing towards wave 3 of primary degree. Now, since April 7th, we made it lower here and the market has been progressing higher. However, we do believe that wave 5 now of this miniate degree has concluded, and we're looking at this wave 5 here. That means that we could see sellers coming back into this market, and obviously that would correct this entire move here since April lows. And so we're looking at two potential areas of support. First one is this previous highs here of this former all-time highs, and that would align with the 55 EMA or the 233 EMA here, aligning with this anchored VWAP here, and that could potentially close this open gap. And we also have this value area low from this volume profile. Now, I could make the case that this could be a subwave, 5 waves here, where you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's a strong possibility. And basically, we're just looking for a catalyst here for sellers to come back in. And if you follow me on X, you know that we have been buyers here. We called the bottom back here in April, and we just initiated buy across the board. And so right now, we're just looking for sellers to come back in so we could add on to our current positions. And some of them that we have sold so that we can buy them later at lower prices. Now, that was it with the S&P 500. Let's also take a look at the QQQs, and it's pretty much same here. However, the only difference here with the Qs is that the POC line here is still below what it was for the S&P 500. And this typically means that when prices get above this level, it signifies that we have concluded wave 3 and we are progressing towards wave 5. And so we're basically looking here is for price to actually retest this POC line here, and that would also align with this 233 EMA and this anchored VWAP. However, I would say it would be very aggressive if this open gap here would close, but there's still a possibility for markets to, get back to this $500 level before buyers step back into this market. So this is how we view the S&P 500. We do believe that a correction will happen very soon. Again, just like with the SPY, we could get a subwave that would continue higher. But for now, as long as we stay below this previous highs, the sellers are in control. Now, we're also going to take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum to get a perspective of how things are faring out in the crypto markets, and then we're going to take a look at the dollar and the VIX and see how volatility is tying up. So let's switch over to Bitcoin and take a look at the technicals. So let's move on and take a look at BTC, and as we can see, price has tested the 55 EMA, which is this green line here, and that could align with an ABC pattern. And we also have to remember that this is just a retest of the former highs here of wave 3. So that's a huge possibility. Now, there's one thing I want to mention is that there's also a very high scenario that this could be a wave 1, 2. And that what we're dealing with now is just a subwave of a 1, 2 as well. So we have 1, 2, and then we have a 1, 2. So that's a very, very bullish setup here for Bitcoin. And I'm obviously open to that scenario. However, one could also make the case that this is wave 3, 5. And if we would look at some of the momentum indicators, it's classic, where you have wave 3. And what's basically happening is that with wave 3, you have a negative divergence towards wave 5. So, that's also confirms that this is actually wave 5. We'll just have to wait and see how price will react to these levels, and that we could, be more sure in the coming days ahead. However, one thing we have to remember right now is that we're also trading below the 21 EMA, which is this red line here. So we're going to see now in a couple day or two if this is going to act as resistance or if we're going to power higher from here and break to new all-time high. So don't be surprised if we could see Bitcoin moving lower and perhaps retest this POC line here. We talked about this with the Qs, and this could be a level of support. And you also have the anchored VWAP here below and the 233 EMA. So these two levels are a little bit extreme in my opinion. So if we would test new lows here, it would most likely be the POC line. And we could perhaps see a setup here where we have a pattern here, an ABC that becomes a larger degree A, and then you have a B here and some sort of wave C concluding building right here. So we're going to take a look at Ethereum and see how the price action looks over there to give us clues how this correction is going over at the altcoin market. So here we have Ethereum, and as we can see, the difference here between Ethereum and Bitcoin is that Ethereum has not concluded wave 5 in our opinion when it comes to the Elliott wave count. So we do have a wave 1, 2, and 3, 4. So we are going to progress towards wave 5 at some point. Now, what we have to do now is look for support for wave 4. Typically, in an Elliott wave setup is that you do test the 34 EMA when you conclude wave 4. Also, the 0.382 is also a candidate where wave 4 gets tested. However, when we look at the structure here, if we zoom in a little bit, we can see that this is a potentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that we're just correcting here towards the upside, and that would set the stage then perhaps for price to retest this 55 EMA aligning with the 100% extension. And so what we're looking for now is to see how price will react to this POC line here. If we're starting to get above it, then one could make the case that this is an ABC and that the correction has concluded, and we should now begin an impulse towards wave 5. And so we're just going to have to wait and see if price is going higher from here. We could also expect that Bitcoin will likely move higher as well. Now, in either case, we do not suggest selling because we believe that this bull market is intact, and that if you're going to sell, you might miss out on potential gains. You're not going to be 100% sure where the market is going to find support. And so if you're in the middle of this rally, you bought it very low, where we did back before the breakout happened right here, you know, we're sitting on massive gains here, but you do want to be a little bit cautious with leverage here. So if you're leveraged up, you want to set back that to 1, and then perhaps when price start to break out some key levels, then you can get back up to your leveraged positions. And so this is how we currently look at Ethereum. We're waiting for this POC line here, and we're going to see if this one is going to break above it or if it's going to act as resistance. If we're seeing some resistance here, we can start to see price moving down toward this 55 EMA aligning with this anchored VWAP. Since we're talking about currencies in general, let's switch over and take a look at the US dollar. And as we can see here, this correction has been in line with the dollar posting higher gains here. We can see the DXY has made higher highs here, and we found some resistance right here at the POC line. But we're watching right now is if this correction here for the DXY is going to eventually find some support, because if the dollar begins to post higher gains from here, the markets will react negatively. So we're watching this anchored VWAP here alongside with this 0.618. If we're starting to break below these levels, we're likely going to break below this trend line here, and the dollar will resume lower. And we do eventually believe that the dollar will go lower. However, this upside correction could take us much higher. We have been mentioning this anchored VWAP, which sort of like trades alongside the 233 EMA, and that the dollar could move up to this level and get rejected there. So we're watching the dollar just to see if this is aligning well with the markets in general, and if we're starting to break some key levels here, we could be more certain the stock market and the crypto markets will post higher gains. Moving over to the volatility index, also known as the VIX, and as we can see, the VIX currently trades much lower despite this correction we're seeing in the markets. Now, the way we look at the structure here is that this is an ABC pattern followed by a W, and that the double correction is now progressing towards wave C here, and that would align with closing this open gap at these levels around 13.5 and knocking out this failed auction at this level as well. So we believe that the VIX will try to gravitate toward these levels, and from there we could see some more market volatility, and then we'll just have to see how the markets will react there. So we can see that the POC line here has acted as resistance, and that the VIX is currently trading below the 55 EMA, confirming that this is a bear market for the volatility index, and that should support the idea that the markets could go much higher. So let's switch up the theme a little bit here and take a look at silver futures. And as we can see, we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that we have concluded wave 5 of minute degree. And we can see here a potential ABC pattern here being concluded. We tested the POC line here, and that we bounced off the 55 EMA. So we're trading above all key moving averages, and this could set the stage for silver to move up much higher. And the reason why I show you this is that we looked at Ethereum before, and that we got the same bounce out of that 55 EMA. And so we're seeing almost the same kind of setup. And you might be wondering, why is everything lining up here? And that has to do with the fact that the market is moving in the same direction. It's the same train basically, and we're just looking at different asset classes to make sure that we are seeing the same kind of correction and the price levels bouncing up from some key levels. Now we're watching the POC line here. If we're getting above this one, that means that we're likely going to see silver breaking out to new all-time highs. We're also going to take a look at gold and see how the gold markets is looking as well. Let's also take a look at gold futures, not in the same lens that we do with the S&P 500 or BTC, because we do believe that gold has not completed its correction to set the stage for a new primary degree wave 1 and wave 2. We do believe that the correction is continuing as we speak, and that we should find resistance very, very soon to proceed lower, because we're looking for something along the line of this, and that we should see the last wave down to around $3,000 before we begin a new cycle for gold. One way, we could obviously be wrong here. So we're watching some key levels. This value area high has acted as resistance, as we can see many times before. So we're starting to break above this level here. That could give us some early indications that, in fact, this small correction here is already concluded and that we already starting a new wave 3 towards primary degree. Now, there's a lot of central bank buying of gold. A lot of people are stacking up gold. So this correction here could be minor. But at the same time, if we would get a correction down to $3,000, I do think that we could see a lot more buyers into the gold market, and that could obviously set the stage for a new bull run. So keep an eye on gold prices here. We do believe that this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here will fail, and that we could see a break below this 55 EMA on a daily chart, and that could force prices to move down here to the 33 EMA, lining up well with $3,000. Now, I promised in the beginning of this video that we would take a look at two stocks, not that they're looking attractive right now, but where they tell us where we currently are in this market. So we do have a Meta here, and we can see that we have most likely concluded wave 5. And if we take a look at the RSI, we can see a clear negative divergence here and here from wave 3 to wave 5. So that's a classic know-how that we are in wave 5, and that we do have an exhaustion gap here that we're likely going to close at some point. So we bounced above this 55 EMA. Meta, just like Microsoft, left a lot of open gaps from the downside moving up. So it's going to be interesting how far this one will find support before we resume higher. Now, typically, as I said before, wave 4 is typically a candidate where, the correction concludes, but due to the nature of this, extended wave 1, we could see prices move much lower here. So watch Meta. We're also going to take a look at Nvidia, a favorite among many. Here's a screenshot of where we pointed out where to buy Meta here, and those who did buy it from these levels, congratulations. But now we're basically looking at potential resistance and potential distribution here. So we can see that this minor wave 3-4 happened right here, and that we had a subwave here towards wave 5, and now we're seeing some distribution here. We're trying to break above this 8 EMA, but eventually I do think that we're going to break below these levels again. Just like I said with the S&P 500, we could continue to see a continuation of a fractal move towards or an impulsive move towards wave 5. This could obviously look something along the line of this before we see some distribution. So this is also an example where how far the market has gone. Nvidia has a lot of buyers here at around $134, so we could see price actually test this level, lining up well with the 233 and the anchor view up here. The 55 is also a strong candidate. So I think we're going to start seeing some correction here, lots of distribution in these stocks. So I would watch Meta and Nvidia just to get a big picture view of how far and when this correction will begin. So this was pretty much it for this video. Give you a strong overview of the S&P 500 and the Qs, as well as Bitcoin and the commodity markets. I do believe that we're going to see a correction soon. August is also typically a weak month for the US stock market, markets in general. So we do remain bullish long term. Any pullback here should be a buy in our opinion, but obviously after some extension, people will take profits at some point. And once we do find support, it will provide another buying opportunity. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I will continue to post more. You can follow me on X if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care for now.